Ladies and gentlemen, before we introduce Mike, I request that all of you tonight, due to the security involved with having a guest speaker that we're honored to have here, that you remain in your seats and don't take pictures or seek autographs during the dinner. It just creates a problem for those that are looking after our vice president, and I'm sure all the ladies and gentlemen out there will be happy to apply. Now, looking to my right, the far corner of the ballroom, Tony Socha, Vice Chairman of the Heisman Committee, will lead in Mike Rozier of the University of Nebraska. Ladies and gentlemen, we are waiting for the arrival of the Vice President outside the ballroom, and will be here momentarily. President of the United States and Mrs. Bush. And now, it's my pleasure to introduce Patricia McCaffrey of the New York City Opera Company, who will sing our national anthem.
Frank Leahy, the legendary coach of Notre Dame, called the next winner the greatest passer he ever saw. The Springfield Rifle, the man who led Notre Dame to a national championship in 1943, was the fighting out of Notre Dame at 6'5", 260 pounds, running the 100-yard dash in a football uniform in under 10.8 seconds. The greatest they ever saw. He led the Detroit Lions to 3 National Football League championships. The winner in 1949. He went on to lead the Baltimore Colts to championship football team. Another great Buckeye from the 1955 Ohio State team, winner of the Heisman. We're delighted to see back the man who won the Heisman Trophy in 1958. His career as a legend at West Point, captain of the Corps of Cadets, the president of his class, a Rhodes Scholar, and the 1958 Football Hall of Fame, who still holds the National Football League record, and now gets the word in every so often when Howard, and here is O.J. Simpson, 1958. 17 straight times, the Big Sooner rushed for over 100 yards and broke an NCAA record with 56 college touchdowns, breaking a record that Glenn Davis had set 25 years earlier. From the University of Oklahoma, the 1969 winner, Steve Owens. The War Eagles of Auburn. The 1971 Nebraska football team was recently voted the greatest college football team of all time in 2 separate polls, and the man who led the Huskers, the 1972 winner, Johnny Rodgers. The seasons went on and the records continued to be smashed, and no one ran the football like Herschel Walker of Georgia, over 5,000 yards in 3 years. Now, the star runner of the New Jersey Generals of the U.S. Football League, the 1982 winner. A recent... The New Jersey Generals of the U.S. Football League are ready to make big news. And their new owner, Donald Trump, is the prime mover. The owner of the Jersey Generals, Donald Trump. You've met the distinguished chairman of the Heisman, Andrew J. Corbett, Jr. To the Vice President of the United States, George Bush. And the president of the Downtown Athletic Club, sitting next to Vice President Bush, is Harold Reinauer. Nebraska, Mike Rozier. We witnessed a gentleman and always a winner, one of the great people in college football, Dr. Tom Osborne of Nebraska. I'm looking forward to...
They're all the whole Rozier family. Would you stand up and let's give you a New York round of applause? He's a winner. He doesn't have to be evasive because he tells it like it is. High-stepping, he never even heard of that because he is so honest. And so he has an abundance of integrity. Mr. Bush also likes to play golf. I met him a year or two ago at the Bogey Buster Celebrity Golf Tournament in Dayton, Ohio, for multiple sclerosis, and he was playing with Cy Lauder, who is here someplace tonight. I couldn't watch him play because I had my own foursome, and I really hope this part is not true. I heard one spectator comment when asked, how does Mr. Bush play? And he says, I've seen better swings on abandoned playgrounds. I know in a crowd this size that there's a lot of Democrats as well as Republicans out here, but I think all of them quite obvious that sometimes in the future it's a possibility that we may be addressing him as Mr. President. It's a pleasure for me. It's an honor to introduce you a distinguished man who is extremely well thought of in and out of the political arena. Ladies and gentlemen, the Vice President of the United States, the Honorable George Bush. Thank you, Johnny. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you very, very much. Thank you. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen, for that warm welcome. What Johnny Lujack didn't tell you is that he watched me coming up the 18th fairway or rough, and at the end of it he turned to me and he said, I think I detect a swing in your flaw there. Bishop Sullivan and Miss McCaffrey, what a wonderful treat you gave us here tonight. And ladies and gentlemen, I really have been looking forward to this evening. At heart, I'm a frustrated name dropper anyway, kind of a Walter Mitty type. I can't run, I can't block, I can't tackle, but sitting up here surrounded by all this talent, I feel like I can run, block, and tackle. And what the hell's the difference when you're 60 years old? My remarks will be brief, and I know that'll be good news for you. But I hope you'll understand, because I'm conserving my energy for what promises to be a rather long and complex weekend. At 6 o'clock tomorrow morning, I leave from Washington for Buenos Aires in Argentina for the inauguration of their new president, and then on the way back stopping in Panama and El Salvador before returning at 3 a.m. Monday morning. I'm going to miss the summit meeting, I'm afraid. That's the one in Dallas between the Cowboys and the Redskins. But I'm not complaining. For the record, I love what I'm doing. I love my line of work. I enjoy working for this president. I shouldn't say this because I have a confidential relationship, but on Thursdays I have lunch with the president, and today was no exception. And just the two of us there, and I noted where he was going to Indianapolis, and I said, well, guess what I'm going to get to do? And I said, I'm going to go up to Heisman Trophy and see Mike and have the pleasure of seeing a lot of other people. And he's a frustrated athlete, you know. And he said, oh, you lucky son of a gun. And he really meant it, you know. So I like my job, and I love having an opportunity to be at an event like this. It's a real pleasure, a special night, not only for a fantastically gifted athlete, but for football fans everywhere. And as one of those, I'm just delighted to take part in these ceremonies honoring Mike Rozier. It was great meeting Mike upstairs, and it was also a very special joy meeting his mother and dad and his family. He filled up half the room here tonight with his family from Camden, but what a great group. And I really think, Mike, that part of what you've done is a marvelous credit to your mother and dad who are with us here tonight. I've been impressed with Mike, young athlete exemplifying the best in college sports, dedication, hard work, and this God-given ability. But I was especially impressed by something that he said after the award was announced last week. He said that much as he valued the individual honor, he had his sights set on a team goal. Nebraska's winning the 1983 national championship. And it's that sort of attitude that makes for winners in team sports, and it's that kind of unselfishness that does credit not only to Mike as an individual, but to his family and his coaches and the officials of his university with us tonight. And incidentally, I don't know if you saw his brother on television the other day, but that made a profound impression on the Bush family as well. And so, Mike, I congratulate you on all you've accomplished in this past season. I'd like to be able to add that I hope you realize your team goal of a national championship. But since I plan to go home to Texas with my family over the holidays, it's not that I'm afraid to take a side in politics, you understand, but I know when to shut up. So I will say, but let me say this. I hope it doesn't seem gratuitous, but speaking as a fan and not as Vice President of the United States, undefeated Nebraska has a great team. Undefeated Texas has a great team. And they're each, I did not bring them with me, but nevertheless, and they're each playing top-flight teams in bowl games on January 2nd. But it seems to me, as just a sideline observer, can't bunt, can't run, can't tackle, but it sure would settle a lot of arguments out there if the Cornhuskers and the Longhorns were playing each other. And I don't know who'd win. And though I'm sure this year Heisman's winner would have a lot to say about that, but as a fan, somehow I just wish that the powers that be in college football could settle on some plan to decide the national championship where they ought to be decided, and that's on the gridiron. I understand the obstacles that stand in the way. Coming from Texas with the pride we have in the Cotton Bowl, I appreciate the interest that the various bowl committees have in preserving their wonderful tradition. But I also think that it's time for the NCAA Division 1A champions to be decided the way championships in all other football divisions and, frankly, in all other intercollegiate team sports are decided. And one of the high spots of my own college days, that goes back a long back into the Lujack era, was taking part in two such national championship playoffs as a member of Yale's baseball team for 3 years in the late 40s. For sports trivia buffs, and you'd have to be a real trivia buff to remember this, in 1948, my senior year, I was captain and first baseman of our team, and the year before that, in 47, when Johnny was winning the award here, we won the Eastern Regional NCAA Championship, beating teams like Illinois and NYU and Clemson and all that, and went on to meet the Western champions from Southern California in the finals out there in Kalamazoo, Michigan in those days. We lost, and but we had a team goal in mind the following year to come back to the finals, and we did. And the big game was played in Kalamazoo, Michigan. Yale was again Eastern champion, and our Western opponents were the Golden Bears of California. The game was close, and in a crucial late inning, with the score tied, California had men on base, and it was then that our team coach, Ethan Allen, did what any good coach does in a tough situation. He played the percentages, and that meant walking the eighth man in the batting order to get to the pitcher. Understand, we didn't have game films, and we didn't have extensive scouting reports in those days as they do now. And it just seemed like the smart thing to do, walk number 8 to get to the pitcher. And so we did, gave up an intentional base on balls, and we got to the pitcher, a fellow named Jackie Jensen. And now, for you, this is God's honest truth. For you younger members of the audience, let me explain that this was the equivalent of a football game plan based on making Turner Gill hand off to Mike. Jackie Jensen was that kind of an all-around athlete. He came in that year 4th. Just looking it up here in the Heisman voting that year, behind Doak Walker and Charlie Justice and pitch to Jackie Jensen, who was headed out of Kalamazoo, Michigan, towards downtown Detroit. Thought me was this: first, be sure to scout out the opposition. Second, remember that there are exceptions to the law of percentages, and exceptional people are what we honor here tonight. Mike Rozier, the Heisman winner of 1983, and then brilliant athletes also, like Steve Young and Doug Flutie as well. And only one can take home that trophy, but as runners-up in one of the keenest competition in sports, both Steve and Doug have earned the distinction of being called winners, too. Sports in America columnist Scotty Reston once wrote, he says, sports in America are something more than a diversion. They're a unifying social force and a counter to the confusion and complexities of our lives. For nearly 50 years, the Heisman has symbolized that unifying social force. And again, I congratulate Mike Rozier on joining the ranks of the great athletes who have won this coveted award. I commend the Downtown AC for creating and sustaining this great tradition. May it flourish as a symbol of individual excellence and social unity in the years to come. And thanks so much for letting the Bushes be a part of it. Thank you very much.
Our students, and in so doing, bringing great honor to the University of Nebraska and to all of the state of Nebraska. Thank you very much.
are running ahead of schedule. But here's where we might get fouled up. Don Crickey was supposed to introduce the first Reno, the 1960 Heisman Trophy winner from Navy, was a great champion and a back loyal to his teammates. His coach, Wayne Harden, reminisced in the 1983 Heisman Tournament because each team that plays them each week, they just play over their heads because if they can be lucky enough to beat the top team, then they themselves will be assured of a successful season. So while all this pressure is mounting, on the field, you see a probably concerned Tom Osborne, but he appears to be totally relaxed, walking slowly along the sideline, talking easily to his coaches and players, not yelling, not doing anything. He kind of gives you the general impression, don't worry, we're going to win. And this is all a piece of cake. So regardless of how he appears or what he feels inside, this youthful-looking man does nothing but win. Right now, they're 12-0. Let's welcome the leader of the undefeated, untied Nebraska Cornhuskers, the #1 team in the country, head football coach Tom Osborne.
Well, thank you very much. It's a pleasure to be here tonight, and I'd like to particularly thank Vice President Bush for coming here this evening, and I hope very much, Vice President, that you will convey my best wishes to Fred Akers when you go back to Texas. It sounds as though you're very close personal friends from some of your remarks there. And John was mentioning the fact that I sometimes appear calm on the sideline, and Doak Walker and I were sitting together last night. He remarked on that. He said, "You always seem so calm, and why is that?" And the truth is, I've given up. And I'd like to real quickly introduce an individual who is here someplace tonight that is very, very important to our program, and I think to the Rozier family, and that's Frank Solis, our backfield coach, who coached Mike this year and then also recruited Mike. So if Frank is around, I'd appreciate if he would stand up. I don't know exactly where he is. Thank you very much. Well, there's so many great players here tonight. I'd just like to put in a word for the coaches, and I'd like to, I think a lot of times people don't realize how important coaching is, and I thought I'd tell you a true story that really illustrates this, and I think puts it into perspective. And this goes back several years ago when we were playing the Liberty Bowl down in Memphis, and we were playing North Carolina, and we weren't playing very well. We were trailing 17-14, and about 3 minutes left to go in the game, and North Carolina had the ball, and it looked like we really didn't have much chance to win. And North Carolina fumbled, and Randy Garcia was the quarterback in the game at that time. He was standing near me when they fumbled. He ran over, and he was real excited. He said, "Coach, what do you want to do?" Because he realized we had about 3.5 minutes, about 80 yards to go. And I said, "Gee, Randy," I said, "I can't say anything. We've tried everything tonight." I said, "What do you want to do?" And he said he couldn't think of anything either. And so finally our trainer was standing there, and this guy was not very bashful. And so he spoke up, and he said, "Well, why don't you run play number 8 to the right and 7 to the left?" And I think those are probably the only 2 plays that he actually knew. But I said, "Gee, that sounds pretty good to me, Randy." I said, let's try it. I said, "I got no better idea." So we went out there and called 8 to the right. Golly, we went about 14 yards, and went back in the huddle. We went 7 to the left, and we made about 10, and we just went right down the field. Running 8, 7, we were going 10, 12, 14 yards of track. Looked much better than we had all night. And we got a first down at the 5-yard line. We called 8 to the right. We lost 2 yards. Went back in the huddle and called 7 to the left. We lost 2 more yards. Went back in the huddle and called 8 to the right. We lost another yard. So all of a sudden it's 4th and 10 at 10. And Randy, being a very astute quarterback, began to realize that maybe 8 and 7 wasn't going to work anymore. And so he looked at me over on the sideline. And I think some of you out there have done a little coaching one type or another, and you know what I did at that point. I looked up in the stands, and I pretended I didn't see him. And so pretty soon he realized that he was going to have to finally call the play himself, and so team went back in the huddle, and they came out, and I began to watch again because I was kind of interested in what was going to happen here. And it looked like they gave the ball Isaiah Hip, or I-back, and Isaiah ran up the middle line. About 8 guys from North Carolina hit him right at the goal, at the line of scrimmage. And well, that's it. The game's over. We're out of time. That was 4th down. And then all of a sudden I saw that really Randy had made a tremendous fake. And he'd hidden the ball in his hip, and he raised up and he threw to Tim Smith, our split end, who was standing all alone in the end zone. And of course we won the game, and everybody cheered and was excited. And again, those of you who have been in coaching realize what I did after the game was over. I took full credit for the victory. But after everyone had kind of filed out of the dressing room, I got Randy aside, and I said, Randy, I said, that was a tremendous call. I said, how in the world did you come up with that play? Because unknown to the sports writers and the fans, we had not even practiced that play for about 2 or 3 months. It wasn't on our ready list. I'd forgotten all about it. And he said, well, Coach, he said, it wasn't that hard. He said, no, we're running 8 to right, 7 to left. I said, yeah, I knew that. And he said, then it seemed like 8 and 7 wasn't working anymore. I said, I noticed that too. He said, well, I got in the huddle, I didn't know what to do, so he said, I just added 8 and 7 together. And he said, I came up with play number 14, and he said, that's what So, and I said, now, Randy, wait a minute. I said, now, you think a minute. I said, 8 and 7 isn't 14, it's 15. And he thought a minute, and he said, you know, Coach, if I was as smart as you are, we'd lost the game tonight. And I think I've just confirmed the point that all these Heisman Trophy winners knew, and that's how valuable coaching really is. But I would like to just say a word or two about Michael tonight. First of all, as a player, the thing I guess that has impressed me about Mike over the last 3 years has been his completeness as a player. I think coaches oftentimes talk about this, but I don't think I've maybe seen a player who has done so many things so well. Mike is a great inside runner. He has great balance and great strength, great determination. He's a good outside runner. He has acceleration. He reads blocks very well. He has enough speed that he just doesn't get caught very, very often. And so he's a very complete runner. I think that's obvious to most everybody who has seen him play. He also is a good receiver, and he can throw the ball well. And the thing that probably is unknown to most people is he's a great blocker. And on many occasions, when we've had a quarterback scrambling or somebody else has got the football, he'll go 30, 40 yards and make some great blocks. So he's a tremendous effort player. And he has great, I think, great attitude for the game. He's a real competitor. He did not miss a game in 3 years, and sometimes he was banged up. If you carry the ball, and as an I-back does, you're going to have times you don't feel real good. But he's a great competitive football player. He has a lot of records. You know, most of the Nebraska records, most of the Big 8 records, and NCAA records. And I guess as a coach, the record that I appreciate the most is the one that has to do with yards per attempt. Because I think in coaching you realize that if you give the guy the ball enough, he's going to pile up a lot of yards. If you pass the ball enough, you're going to get a lot of passing yards. But really what you're concerned with is what happens per attempt. You know, every time you give it to him, what happens. And, of course, Mike, for the season, set a record of 7.8 per rush, and I think per career about 7.2 per rush. Now, as a coach, that's kind of comforting because you know that if you hand him the ball on first down, then it usually is going to be 2nd and 2. And that makes your play selection a lot easier when you're in those kind of situations. So, and as Johnny alluded to, of course, Mike had over 2,000 yards, and we were accused many times this year of running up the score, and yet Mike played about 65 to 70% of the time. There were 5 games that he played roughly half the game, and there were only 3 games in which he was in there in the 4th quarter. So he did it on 23 carries per game. And I think had he carried it what many people have who have won the Heisman Trophy, he would have been right at 3,000 yards, which would have been quite a mark. So he was a very, very productive football player. Just one other thing I'd like to mention. And that is that I really don't think there's any such thing as a privilege without responsibility. And we talk about that some. And, you know, I was here 11 years ago with Johnny Rogers. And I guess one of the most satisfying things in my coaching career has been the manner in which Johnny, I think, met that responsibility. I think he's been a fine businessman, a very good father, and probably more importantly, I think he's been very responsible to the children of lots of other fathers. He's done a tremendous job of paying people back for the trust that they had in him. And that's been very, very rewarding and very important to me. And so I'm naturally concerned about Mike and the way he will react. And I'd just like to say a word or two about Mike and the type of person that he is. I know that, number one, that his family is awfully important to him, and in a very genuine sense. There's very little that he does that he doesn't consider his mom and dad and his brothers and sisters. I think that's very important. Number two, he talks a little bit about being a team player, like most everybody does. If they're a back, you better talk about those linemen. But, you know, he has over the years in many ways, to me, demonstrated that he really is a team player, and he really does care, and that he has never, in my mind, ever put himself above the welfare of the whole group, which is somewhat of an unusual trait sometimes. He has a great sense of humor, and I think to survive these 2 or 3 days, you've got to have a great sense of humor, which has served him very well. And lastly, I would say this, that I think he cares a lot about other people, and particularly children and handicapped people. I think he wants to work with them. And so, in conclusion, I would say that I don't think he will ever embarrass you. I think he will be a real credit to this award. Thank you very much.
Tell you that our that our Polish Pope John Paul II is upset with the Polacks in Rome. Worse is that the Italians are grabbing them, lighting them, and throwing them back. Here's a man who does his job by lighting fires with the people that serve under him. As it's a 3-year term. Now, wait a minute. Now, you sit down a minute. Now, any time that somebody wants to serve 3 years in any kind of an organization...
President will do assist me. I not only have a weak voice, I have a weak body. To Mike Rozier. The Heisman Trophy Award, sir.
Well, it's my turn.
I told my brother Guy I won't be nervous in Lincoln. I'm nervous, guy. But I always said if I won this Heisman Award, I'd give it to my mom. Guy, you come up here, please. Hurry up, the Vice President had to leave. On behalf of the Downtown Athletic Club and me, Mom, this trophy is for you. Make sure you're on job of mine. It was a hard job. But it's a great honor to win this award, the Heisman Trophy. Not only just an award for me, it means for me as far as being the best player in the country and the best player of the year. I would like to thank the Downtown Athletic Department, club, for just giving my family and me and everyone here the nicest time we had in my years of being a student at the University of Nebraska and a player, just being an American student here in New York today. I'd like to thank my teammates. If it wasn't for the offensive line, as everybody knows down in front of them, if it wasn't for your teammates and your offensive line blocking well for you, doing things they're supposed to do during games day, you wouldn't be sitting here now winning the Heisman like I won today. My fans all over the country, not only in Lincoln, Nebraska, or in the state of Lincoln. I mean, I'm quite sure I have fans all over the country. I'm rooting for University of Nebraska. My teachers, my coaching staff, my coaches way back in Little League, high school, elementary. I mean, it was just a great honor for me to win this award. And I will try to keep up the greatness of winning this award, as being a citizen of America, doing the best I can, whatever I do, when I go out in the world and face everybody. I mean, it's not over yet. We have one more game, hopefully, against Miami, and we will win it. You know, Coach Osborne called the right call that he always been doing. But if he don't, I call, you know, 8 to the right, 7 to the left. But whatever I do my best and work hard at it, you know. And one more person I'd like to thank, the Lord Jesus Christ. Because one for him, all this wouldn't be possible, for everybody being here and for me winning this award. Because he gave me a gift. I feel though the gift he gave me is the talent to go out there and run around, do the best I can. And the gift I give back to him is doing the best I can at it. And it's like another gift from him to me, is winning the Heisman. Now, I will try to do my best to keep up the good work I've been doing and keep the word Heisman going, so little kids and other high school kids coming up will appreciate the things that Heisman really means. Thank you.